what's up? Welcome to Atenistalks, your go-to space for deep dives into the issues that really matter. And today, we've got something extra special lined up for you. Drumroll please. Sustain the City and EcoEchoes. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Have you ever heard what it takes to build a city that doesn't just grow, but thrives? A city where everyone has access to green spaces, safe streets, and affordable homes? That's what UN Sustainable Development Goal #11 is all about. Creating cities that are inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. This is not just a global agenda. This is all happening right here in Mindanao, the land of promise.
Oh, absolutely. This one is right up my alley. But before we dive in, Nar, how has your week been? Anything interesting?
Well, same old. I've been trying to go back into my workout routine, but let's just say it's a work in progress.
I feel you. I've been doing the opposite though. I've been trying to hit the gym, trying to work off all those pastel de leches last weekend.
Oh, please don't remind me of that. Mindanao snacks are really dangerous. But speaking of Mindanao, let's get into our topic for today. You ever think about what it takes to build a city that's not just big, but actually thriving? Like one with parks, safe streets, and affordable homes for everyone? That's basically what UN Sustainable Development Goal #11 is all about. Alright, let's jump into it. For this segment, we have here Marianne, who's going to help us talk about urbanization in the Philippines, especially in Mindanao. In our case, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it brings progress, economic growth, and development. But on the other hand, it creates challenges like overcrowded neighborhoods, unaffordable housing, and environmental issues. As more people move to cities, the demand for basic services skyrockets, and that's when we need to pause and rethink how we're growing. Sounds overwhelming? Don't worry, we're here to break it down. Let's talk about how Mindanao is handling its rapid urbanization, the traffic jams, the piles of trash, and most importantly, how to keep things fair for everyone.
Yeah, that's true. But when you think about urbanization, Nar, what do you think the biggest challenge is?
I'd say it's managing all the rapid growth while keeping it fair for everyone. The more people flock to cities, the more pressure there is on basic services like transportation, housing, and even waste management. What about you, Cole? What's your thoughts on this?
For me, it's definitely the issue of overcrowding. I mean, you see it all over. Families packed into tiny spaces, and the waste problem just gets worse. But before we get into solutions, let's hear from our guest who knows the real situation on the ground better than most. Marian, can you give us a lowdown on the issue?
Sure thing. Urbanization in Mindanao has brought some serious challenges, and one of the biggest is the lack of affordable housing. You get a family back in a crowd with little to no space, which lead to no access to proper sanitation. It's not just about the space, it's a health risk too. And when you mix in poor waste management, you're dealing with environmental disaster waiting to happen.
Exactly. And that's not the only problem. What happens when entire communities get left behind? We need to think about the bigger picture here. Nicole, anong thoughts mo about this?
Mm, well, to add what Marian said, I find the lack of access to basic services like healthcare and education, especially in rural and marginalized community, even more heartbreaking. Many people move to cities hoping to find better opportunities, but the gaps in services are massive. This imbalance not only aggravates the challenges of urbanization, but also creates a future where division between rural and urban centers become even more pronounced. If we don't take action soon, the consequences will be alarming.
Wow, that's really a scary situation. What about the government? Are there any policies or programs that are currently in place to address this?
There are efforts like affordable housing initiatives or waste management system, but honestly, is not enough. We need more local action and awareness to really see the difference.
Exactly. And speaking of gaps, Nicole, what are your thoughts on access to basic services? Because it's not just about housing, right?
Oh, definitely. What really hits me is the lack of access to healthcare and education, especially in rural areas. So many people decide to move to cities hoping for a better life, but the services just aren't there. It's heartbreaking when people leave everything behind, only to face more challenges.
It's tough. People in rural areas are often left behind. And when they move to cities, they end up in this overcrowded space without the service they need. The divide between urban and rural communities is getting worse.
So true, and it's a vicious cycle. If this keeps going unchecked, what do you think will happen?
Well, if nothing happens, we'll see even more crowded cities and worse environmental damage and growing inequality. It's not sustainable, and that's why we need to focus on long-term solutions.
Right? And while there are efforts like better public transportation, urban planning projects, and green spaces, we still have a long way to go. Public awareness has to grow, and the existing policies need stronger implementation if we want to achieve real lasting change.
Definitely. So, what can we do, Nar? How can the listeners contribute to making our cities more sustainable?
Well, for starters, we can stay informed, like support local initiatives and raise awareness. That is something that we really need to highlight. It's also important to push for better policies and engage in community programs focused on sustainability. Every little action helps. Now, let's dive into something that really hits close to home. How Sustainable Development Goal #11 aligns with Christian values. You might be wondering, wait, how do urban planning and faith connect? Like, are they really related? Well, they actually go hand in hand. Think about it. Sustainable Development Goal 11 is all about creating cities that are inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And as Christians, we're called to stewardship, to care for what God has entrusted to us, including our communities and the earth. It's also about human dignity, making sure everyone, especially the most vulnerable, is treated with respect and has every chance to live a full life.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. But let me ask you this, Nar. How does sustainable urban development actually serve a way to bring social justice? Because, I mean, we always talk about green spaces and eco friendly cities, but how does that help everyone, especially the marginalized community?
That's actually a great question. Like, the thing is, when we plan cities with social justice in mind, it's not just about making things greener. It's about making sure that everyone benefits, diba? That means affordable housing, accessible public spaces, safe streets, and most importantly, giving a voice to those communities that are usually left out of these decisions. It's not just about buildings, it's about building fairly.
Totally. So it's like urban development can actually be a tool for inclusion and equity if done right. Marian, what's your take on how Christian teachings, especially about human dignity, can guide urban planning?
When we talk about human dignity in Christian context, it means every person has inherent worth, regardless of their status or wealth. So, in city planning, we need to prioritize those who are often overlooked, like low income communities or those facing house insecurity. Christian values push us to make decisions that are not just about economic growth, but benefiting others, especially the marginalized. It's about building cities that are socially just, not just physically resilient.
Exactly. And this ties directly to issues like housing and transportation. If we're not including marginalized voices in the planning process, we're just putting band aids on bigger problems.
Right? And the big moral question here is, how do we balance urban growth and sustainability? As Christians, we have a responsibility to take care of both the earth and the people in it. That means finding ways to grow cities that are livable for everyone without harming the environment. At the end of the day, it's about collective action, working together guided by Christian values like stewardship, justice, and compassion. If we can't do that, we're not just building for today, but future generations.
Wow, Nar, I really love how you framed that. So it's not just about the here and now, it's about leaving a lasting impact on our communities that aligns with our faith.
Exactly, that really is.
On our communities that aligns with our faith.
Exactly, that really is the point. It's our moral imperative to not only care for creation, but ensure that in our growth, everyone benefits. It's a big challenge with the right values guiding us. But, we can get there. Moving on to our next segment, we have here Yowen, who is going to help us talk about something really important stewardship.
In the Christian context, stewardship means taking care of the world and ensuring resources are used wisely and fairly. In Mindanao, this principle is super relevant to urban development, especially when we think about social justice. Ewan, you've been following these changes closely. What's your perspective on how urbanization is impacting access to resources in marginalized communities?
Thanks, Nicole. Urbanization in Mindanao is a mixed bag. While it brings in jobs and growth, it also leaves many people behind. Marginalized communities often struggle to access basic needs like decent housing, healthcare, and education because the focus tends to be on flashy developments that don't help anyone. It's frustrating because urbanization should lift everyone up.
Exactly. It's like we're building these impressive cities, but we're forgetting about the people who need support the most. This is where the concept of stewardship becomes key. If we manage our resources and urban planning with a stewardship mindset, we can create spaces that not only looks good but also serves the community, especially those in need.
Yes, and we can't forget about the importance of including marginalized voices in these discussions. They should have a say in how their neighborhoods develop. When their needs are acknowledged, we can create urban environments that foster equality and access for everyone.
Spot on. Stewardship isn't just about taking care of the environment, it's about ensuring that our urban planning is equitable. We need to ask ourselves how can we design cities that prioritize people and the planet? Ultimately, it's about creating communities where everyone has the chance to thrive. With Christian teachings on social justice guiding us, we can build a future where stewardship leads to fair access for all, regardless of background.
That was really beautiful. We learned so much from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Nar, Nicole. Thank you.
Welcome back, Atenistas. Today, we're diving into another fantastic topic living in the authentic image of God with our special guests, Yowen and Sophie. So, Yowen, what does that even mean?
Great to be here, Nar. Living in God's image means reflecting His qualities like love, justice, stewardship, and compassion. These qualities guide us to live responsibly, especially when it comes to how we consume and produce.
So it's about being like God in our everyday lives, right? That sounds pretty cool.
Exactly. And this concept ties with the Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goal 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. It's a call to create resilient, safe, and inclusive urban spaces that value both people and the environment.
Speaking of sustainability, let's break that down. Sustainable living is all about respecting the environment and conserving resources.
Nice. And how does this connect to justice and environmental care?
Great question. Reflecting God's image directly links to our responsibility for the natural world. Take Genesis chapter 2 verse 15. For example, the Lord God then took the man and settled him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and care for it. That's our divine job description.
So it's not just about being eco friendly, it's about fulfilling our responsibility to God and each other.
Jackpot, Nicole. When we care for creation, we're embodying the justice and compassion that God calls us to. It's about making sure everyone can thrive in a healthy environment.
And in urban areas, that means promoting lifestyles that are both sustainable and equitable. We can be good stewards of the resources we have while ensuring that everyone has access to a clean and safe environment.
That really is inspiring. So, how do you implement these values into our everyday lives?
Well, it starts with the small choices like reducing waste, supporting local farmers, or advocating for greener policies. Every little action can make a big difference.
I love that. And when we take these steps, we're not just being sustainable, we're also shining a light on God's love and justice in our communities.
Absolutely. It's about creating a ripple effect of positive change. So let's commit to living in a way that reflects God's image and makes our communities better for everyone.
Moving on to the next segment, we're going to dive into a topic that affects us all: waste management and public transportation in urban areas like Davao City. Are we ready to unpack this?
Absolutely, Nara. What kind of issues are we talking about? Is it just overflowing trash bins?
Pretty much, we're dealing with overflowing waste, ineffective public transportation systems, and a lot of frustrated commuters. It's a mess. But here's the twist: how do we tackle these problems while keeping God's teachings at heart?
Love that angle. So, what Christian values do we put into this conversation?
Well, it's all about love and stewardship. We need to care for our environment and each other, right? God calls us to take care of the earth and the people in our communities.
Exactly. And the government has been trying to step up. They've implemented some policies to address these issues. But it feels like there's still a long way to go, right? What do you think, Mark?
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. It sounds like there's a gap between what's been done and what needs to happen. How can we support those who are struggling with these challenges?
That's where we come in. We can volunteer, advocate for better policies, and educate ourselves and others about the impact of our waste. Plus, we have to remember the importance of loving one another as God teaches us. It's not just about the trash, it's about the people affected by it.
That makes sense. So, how does proper waste management and public transportation tie into this idea of community love?
It's huge. When we improve waste management and public transportation, we are not just cleaning up our streets, we're making life easier for everyone. We create safer, healthier environments where love can thrive.
And it's all connected. When people feel cared for and supported, they're more likely to show love to others. It's a beautiful cycle.
Totally. So, what practical steps can we take to execute these ideas? How can we, make this change actually happen?
We can start small, like sorting out waste properly or using public transport more. Each little action adds up. And let's not forget about raising awareness in our communities about these issues.
That's a great point. And as we engage in these efforts, we're living out our faith in action, showing that we care for all living beings. It's a way of loving our neighbors.
Exactly. Together, we can make a significant impact on our urban areas. So let's keep God's values in our hearts as we work towards a cleaner and more loving community.
That was really an insightful talk. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Alright. Alright, let's jump into the next segment, where we'll explore secondary reflection and how it connects with SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Francis, can you help us unpack this?
Absolutely not. Secondary reflection is about looking beyond the surface. It encourages us to think deeply about how urban development impacts our communities and the environment, all while embodying the values of God. Interesting. So it's like taking a moment to consider the broader implications of our choices, right? Exactly. This perspective helps us create spaces that foster human dignity and environmental growth. When we approach urban planning with this mindset, we prioritize the well-being of everyone involved.
That sounds really transformative. What are some benefits we might see when we incorporate this reflection into our cities?
Great question. One key benefit is that secondary reflection leads us to more thoughtful, sustainable solutions that addresses not just immediate needs but long-term outcomes. It is about blending modern advancements with cultural preservations and environmental stewardship. So it's not just about what's new and flashy. It's also about honoring our roots and protecting our environment. Exactly. We want to strike a balance that respects historical patterns while still pushing for innovation. It's like building cities that tell a story, our story, while embracing what's to come.
Wow, I really love that approach. How can we as individuals contribute to making these ideas a reality in our communities?
It all starts with awareness and action. We can advocate for policies that reflect these values, participate in community dialogues, and sustainable practices. Every little effort counts. And that's when we become agents of change. By fostering conversations and encouraging inclusive practices, we can build space that truly reflect our values.
Absolutely. Together, let's aim for urban spaces that embody love, respect, and purpose. We all have a role in this mission. Thank you, Frances, for joining us in this talk. Alright, let's shift gears a little bit. Mitch, I know you've got some amazing stories from Mindanao about successful local projects and sustainable urban developments. Can you fill us in?
Sure not. In Zamboanga, we've got fantastic water conservation project where communities are using water harvesting systems. This has been crucial, especially during dry seasons, and it perfectly reflects the Christian principle of stewardship, taking care of resources God has entrusted to us. That's awesome. And I've heard Iligan City is doing something with renewable energy. What's happening there? Exactly, Nicole. Iligan has embraced hydro and solar power, significantly reducing their reliance on fossil fuels. What makes this initiative stand out is the communities involved. They're making decisions together, ensuring everyone benefits. It's a real reflection of loving your neighbor, making sure no one is left.
It's incredible how these projects are people centered as much as they are about the environment.
That's what makes them so powerful. Nor, these aren't just solutions. They're community driven, grounded in values of stewardship and collective responsibility. They show how, when we come together guided by faith, we can create real, lasting change. Can these projects inspire other regions to do the same? Absolutely. These initiatives are blueprints other regions can adopt, focusing on collective action grounded in Christian values. Whether it's addressing water issues, renewable energy, or tackling deforestation or pollution, it's all possible with community are cooking.
It's inspiring how faith-based communities can lead the charge for sustainability.
Exactly. Faith communities have a unique ability to foster unity and action. When people see that their efforts align with their values of love and stewardship, it drives deeper, more meaningful change. What's the first step for someone who wants to get involved? Start small. Organize local cleanups, advocate for greener practices in your neighborhood, or get your church involved. It's about building momentum together. Every small action adds up when done with a sense of collective responsibility.
Thanks, Mitch. These stories from Zamboanga and Aligan show how faith and action can lead to sustainable change. It's really inspiring.
Like to share more. Let's keep building on this momentum. Remember, listeners, it all starts with small, meaningful steps. Let's all work together for a sustainable future.
In this next segment, we're discussing a technology that could be a game changer for sustainable energy. Parabolic dishes. Most of us have heard about solar panels, but parabolic dishes offer something different, right?
Exactly. Parabolic dishes use a mirror-like surface to concentrate sunlight on a single point, reaching temperatures up to 1000 degrees Celsius. This intense heat powers engines or turbines, converting solar energy into electricity effectively. And because they waste so little energy, they save on production costs.
That's incredible. So, how can parabolic dishes benefit cities or even communities?
They're fantastic for reducing fossil fuels reliance and greenhouse gas emissions. They're efficient enough to produce power even in less than ideal conditions, unlike solar panels that struggle on cloudy days.
And they're adaptable too, right? They can work in urban and rural areas.
Exactly. They're available for both small urban spaces and large industrial uses. Plus, they're great for water desalination, which is vital for areas with water scarcity. They purify water without the need for costly and or environmentally harmful processes.
So they aren't just contributing clean energy. They help with water issues too. And there's other useful for environmental communities.
Absolutely. For off-grid areas, they provide low-cost energy and water solutions without big infrastructure. And as solar power tech, they're resistant against extreme weather, which is key for climate adaptation. These vehicles tick every box for clean energy, low cost, and low environmental impact. They really do. By using parabolic dishes, we're advancing sustainable cities and long-term goals like reducing deforestation, cutting air pollution, and building resilient communities.
As we wrap up today's discussion, let's take a moment to summarize the key points we remembered. We've explored how building sustainable cities is not just about infrastructure and policies. It's deeply rooted in Christian moral principles. We talked about the importance of caring for creation, pursuing justice, and ensuring dignity for everyone in our communities. All these principles can guide us toward a future where cities and communities can thrive.
And I want to challenge you, our listeners, to really think about how this applies to your own lives. Through secondary reflection, take a step back and consider how you can actively contribute to building purpose-driven cities that aren't just sustainable, but also morally responsible. Think critically about your role, whether that's through reducing waste, promoting eco-friendly initiatives, or even just advocating for policies that create a more just and inclusive environment. This is a time for each of us to foster change with a clear moral compass guiding our actions.
Exactly. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences on this. Join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag #SustainOurCity. Share how you're contributing to building a sustainable future, whether that's organizing neighborhood cleanups, advocating for greener initiatives, or simply making eco-friendly choices. Even the smallest efforts can lead to transformative change. And by participating in these activities, you're embodying the Christian call to stewardship and reflecting your commitment to care for creation.
Yes, you remember change starts with each of us. And when we engage in these efforts, we're working hard toward a future that benefits not only ourselves, but everyone in our community.
Before we go, I want to thank our amazing guests who joined us earlier for their insightful contributions, and to all of you guys for listening. I challenge you to take meaningful action within your own communities, support local initiatives, advocate for inclusive urban planning, and connect with others who share the commitment to sustainability. Personal responsibility is the key point. Let's reflect on how our choices, inspired by faith and moral principles, can foster a just and equitable environment for all. Thank you again for joining us. Let's keep pushing forward together with faith, purpose, and action. Until next time, and take care, Atenistalks. You've been listening to Atenistalks, your go-to space for deep dives into the issues that really matter.